so much stuff that you're just kind of speeding past. Alright, this is where I, like... This is like a whole-ass restaurant. I didn't even notice that. That's wicked cute. Not that it's very legible, because the texture's so compressed. But I don't know. I just kind of love how crazy detailed these are. These even have custom animations if you bump into them. This is like a whole-ass display. I don't know. I just love this. Oh, the game's like fighting me. It's like, get back on the path. And I'm like, no, I want to see... And for context, again, just kind of like looking at the big picture of this. That was all for that, like, actually not even 2 seconds of gameplay. Oh, okay, here we go. Like, again, zooming like right past this, but these are just like actually gorgeous streets to walk down. I think this is what really got me, this like arc of vines and flowers making this like really cute shadowed road here. I want to live here. This just has like random like cute grassy paths in the middle of it and stuff. I don't know. It's just all wicked cute. I love how much this stupid game cares. I'm making my way through Sonic Unleashed. It's one of my favorite games of all time, and I haven't revisited it in a while. And I went out of my way to set up my old 364 and everything. Shield cancel. Yeah, I'm like... For the most part, like, exploring the Werehog mechanics more than I really ever have before. Because I have played it, like, within the past, like, 5 or 6 years or so. And I remember when I last played it having, like, a bit more fun with the Werehog or whatever. But I don't think I, like, dug too deep into, like, just how, like, fun you could get with it. And this time, I think what I'm very intentionally doing is only upgrading the combat skills, not upgrading the, not upgrading anything else. So, like, the enemies are about as hard as they can be to kill. So I have to actually, like, care what I'm doing. I just think that makes the Werehog stages way more fun. Because I feel like every review you see for... Oh, but this isn't where I have to go. I just got really distracted. Every review you see for the game is like, the Werehog sections are just a total bore, and they're the worst thing ever, and they take too long, and I just want to get back to the Sonic, and you can just mash your way through them. And I'm like, I mean, you don't have to mash your way through them. You can actually make them make you think if you want to. I guess that's just part of the consequence of turning this game into an RPG for no good reason, is that you can make everything way easier, and then it makes you feel like you don't have to do anything in the stages. Which is cool, if that's, you know... I guess it makes it like a flexible difficulty. I guess that's what I'm making the most of with it, is I'm making it a harder mode by intentionally using the RPG mechanics against me. So I guess that's kind of cool for what it's worth. But yeah, no. I was talking about it the last time. The Werehog combat, it does something that I personally have like a really, really, really high value for in action games. You know, whether it's, you know, Devil May Cry, Bayonetta, etc. Character action games is the term that I've heard for them before. Where, the moves that you use all have like a very different use case for them. Like, almost no two combos are doing like literally the same exact thing. And well, it won't make a game bad for me if it's not great at doing that. Like, I do like Bayonetta a lot, but Bayonetta has that problem really bad where, like, 99% of your moveset feels exactly the same, and, like, you're just mashing on something until you dodge away from it, which is fun, and they make it fun, and it's not like literally every combo feels exactly the same or whatever. But I just find a lot of value in games that make, like, every single little move you do feel a lot different from each other. And because of the stupid fucking stretchy Werehog arms, they actually do like a really good job of playing into that. I remember posting about how cool the mechanics were on Twitter, right? And I got people on the fence about agreeing or calling it shallow and lame. Yes, the next morning I woke up, or two, the rocks kept going. Yeah, no, they're like, there is actually a lot to dig into here, and it's a lot of fun. I don't know. And I definitely think doing, like, getting the skill, like, I think that actually might be how the RPG mechanic stuff fights against this game. Where, because you have to use skill points to get more moves, people who are playing the easier version of the game, where you upgrade, like, how much damage you do, and, like, stuff like that, or how much health you have, how much damage you do, that kind of thing, are also getting less tools to work with. So they're getting an objectively, like, lamer version of the combat, because they don't get stuff to work with. I think there's an argument to be made about the gameplay and unlocking new moves. And I don't think there's a problem with unlocking the moves. I just think it's weird that it's not like a Devil May Cry game where you can kind of pick and choose as you go along. It's either you get moves or you get all the other stuff that makes the game easier. It's not just kind of like you're constantly getting moves. It's like, if you decide to make the game easier, it also means you have less tools to work with, as opposed to you just getting more and more stuff as you're learning the game. And that's where this system ends up being kind of weird. You can see that point. Yeah, I mean, I don't necessarily mind it. Like, I think it is smart in the big picture of Devil May Cry, because if you just threw a new player into having all of those moves right up front, it would be super overwhelming, and it would just feel weird. You'd probably end up doing a bunch of stuff by accident if you were somebody who wasn't, like, super familiar with the genre. Because it would just be like, you know, there would just be all these different things you were doing, and you wouldn't maybe even necessarily know how you were doing them. But in a game like this, it's just weird that, like, having the flexibility is an option. It's on the people if they want to engage with the mechanics, or just become gorilla and do big damage. And I guess, like, I feel like on paper that's not inherently a bad thing, because again, that's like almost like a difficulty selection at that point, but it doesn't seem like it played out in the game's favor, where clearly a lot of people don't see it that way to begin with. Absolutely not. The game was fucked out of the gate, especially considering the timeline of events that were in Sonic's history. Fans were on fucking which one took him. Yeah. Yeah, I feel like that was honestly like a moment in time where, oh wow, this is not going to work, is it? Yeah, no, this game got like 5s and 6s and maybe 7s like across the board. And most of it just came down to the Werehog, which, like, even at the time I was like, I guess I get it, especially because of like the ratio of the game and how good the day stages were. But like, I don't know, I just didn't mind it enough to be that hung up on it that it ruined the entire game for me. This game is too pretty to even just walk around at this slow pace for me to care that it was a sizable part of the game. I was saying earlier how I feel like one of these days I want to finally get around to S-ranking. Either S-ranking everything in this game or 100%ing everything in this game. But that is, like, so much easier said than done, it's crazy. This game is actually, like, kind of insane to do that. I think ooh, I see, shield kits. This game is way too clean to hate that much. Unless you just really hated these parts of the game, which I guess even to some extent I was somewhat predisposed to already like these kinds of games as much as I do. So that probably helped. I think even at the time I was already like, I think it was like around the start of when I got into like Devil May Cry games and such, which obviously at the end of the day were much deeper games, but it was still just kind of like, oh, a sprinkling of Devil May Cry in my Sonic game. Why not? That's not the worst thing ever. Worth completely hating this game over. I feel like with a lot of 3D Sonic games, you just have to play along. You're gonna be a little janky and a little cringe, but you just gotta let yourself enjoy it. Yeah. And I can understand how the general gaming public would not do that, and why, like, this was like around the time where everyone was like, stop putting all of Sonic's friends in all these games. And it's like, that's a pretty valid take if you just want to enjoy a pretty straightforward game from start to finish. But it's also probably exactly what a lot of people, you know, when you think of a Sonic fan liking these games, it's probably because they like all of those parts inside and out. Which is also valid. Opinions are valid. I will say, though, I do kind of having one of those, like, am I just being an old man about it moments where I know that, like, the excuse me, the Sonic writing team has changed a lot since Unleashed. Oh, can you just slide under here? That's cool. And I know that, like, basically everybody hated it for a while. Like, starting with, like, Sonic Generations, the writing was really bad for a long time. As far as, like, them, like, just not taking the world or characters very seriously and trying to be a lot more jokey, which just didn't end up even... It didn't end up being very good jokes, so there wasn't much left thereafter. But more so recently, like with Sonic Frontiers, they took the storytelling a lot more seriously. And for a lot of it, I could see where they were going with it. And I did kind of like the big picture of what they were doing, but I feel like the moment-to-moment, I, like, really couldn't get myself on the headspace to enjoy that much. And I don't know how much of that is it just being worse in a way that I don't like, or if I'm just being an old man where I'm like, the Sonic games I grew up with had awesome, fun storytelling that I liked a lot. Meanwhile, it's just because it's the one I grew up with, so I just kind of, like, got my head in the headspace for that cheesiness. In a way that, like, my adult brain kind of refuses to do for a new Sonic game, if that makes sense. Basically just trying to, like, think about it in a way where I don't want to just seem like I'm writing it off, because this, you know, again, being an old man about it, the stuff I grew up on was better just because it was the stuff I grew up on. Or if there is actually something more there, which I kind of feel like there is, but I feel like I have to think on that more myself, or maybe, like, go through the story again. Not much of a Sonic fan, but I think it's a lot more fun when they're trying to be edgy than when they're trying to be silly. That was the big thing with Frontiers, is it's the first game in a long time where they did try to be edgy and, like, work with that a bit more. But I think the main issue that I had with Frontiers is that it did a decent amount of that in a good way, but then it still had that, like, ultra cheesy power of friendship writing that, like, the adventure games really didn't have. At least not in that way, where it came off like just, like, extra, like, okay, I get it, you're writing this for kids. Except for Sonic Heroes, but I also always hated Sonic Heroes writing. I feel like the power of friendship stuff really only works if you go all in. 1000% Saga. Yeah, which I feel like most of the Sonic games that have that kind of writing are also, like, they feel a lot more like budget and lame and clean. So it just kind of feels like a lame version of all of the Sonic characters just saying generic things because it's a kid's game, which I don't vibe with, in part because I am not a child. Although, again, the Sonic Heroes stuff did not hit when I was a child, so maybe that's just never really been my vibe. How do you feel about Chip? I love Chip. This is a Chip safe space. And that's actually something I was going to say earlier, is, like, you like this version of Eggman a lot. I think this has, like, always been one of my favorite iterations of Sonic, because normally I don't really, like, love him as a character. And you know what? Even going back to the whole power of friendship thing. Most games that do lean into that, like, power of friendship writing are, like, super lame about it, and sometimes almost literally say that exact line word for word out loud, which is when you know it's really bad. In this game, it just actually feels like two friends hanging out. It feels like Sonic is just a really nice guy for this little energetic guy who's being all cute and ridiculous, and they just want to go on a road trip together to solve their problems, and they're just having fun being nice to each other and being fun along the way. And I love it. I just love watching it. It's not a great story as a whole, but I just kind of love watching them as characters. And it makes it literally impossible for me to find Chip annoying. Also, he just has a really cute design. That also goes a long way. Oh yeah, this song. This song's really corny, but really cute. Especially for Chip's theme song. There's like one line in this song that has always stuck with me that I'll point out when it gets to it. Okay, I think the line I was thinking of is coming up. Yeah.
So send me a letter, let me know how you're doing. You are my
That line, for whatever reason, I feel like
friend. We'll never
it just, like, the whole, like, send me a letter, let me know how you're doing. I think maybe it's because of when I played this game, which was, like, kind of at the tail end of high school, where, like, friends were starting to, like, split apart a lot more. And that's, like, kind of what the theme of this song is in general. Or it's just kind of, like, just kind of left a good message of even if you don't stay in contact with somebody, like, because that might start happening more, or at least at that time in my life it would. It was, like, it was kind of cute to hear a message that was like, no, you can still just, like, keep in touch, even if it's, like, a little bit harder or a little bit less frequent. It's not like they're not a person in your life. I wanted to start with Sonic 2 just because it's, like, one of my other games that, like, I won't pretend to be, like, an expert who can run through everything and figure out every trap perfectly, but it is just, like, one of those childhood games that, I know pretty inside and out. At least on, I've played through this game a million times level. If I'm not mistaken, Sonic 2 is the first game I ever played. It's either that or it was the Lion King game for Genesis, which I didn't realize until way later in life, like, isn't super uncommon. Like, apparently that and the Aladdin game, which I also had, are, like, the top-selling Genesis games of all time, basically. I forget if there was more copies of Sonic 1 or Sonic 2, like, out in circulation, but I never actually played Sonic 1 or 3 on an actual Genesis. I remember really only being able to get so far in this game as a kid, though. Or, normally I could only get so far. I want to say once you got to, like, Hilltop-ish is when it became, like, extra hard for me. I definitely did get to the final stage at least a handful of times. But, like, infamously, this game has, like, a massive difficulty spike on the last stage where it's just a really difficult boss fight where you don't have any rings. So, never had Sonic 1 as a kid. And then Sonic 3, I distinctly remember, like, obviously being a kid with no money. I saw it at, like, a local, like, card and video game shop. And the box art, like, haunted me. Because I remember, like, seeing it there, and I'm pretty sure I literally had, like, a dream about it the next day. Like, imagining what the game was like. Honestly, in general, the soundtrack in this game is phenomenal. Like, not that Sonic music isn't, like, generally good. But, for an introduction to video games, Sonic as a character, and Sonic's music, this is a really cool place to start. It's no wonder I like video games a lot through my entire life. Yeah, I feel like this game, and I guess basically, I don't know, there's like a handful of games that I remember playing a lot as a kid. That I just have a lot of fun seeing, like, the contrast and, like, how much they gave me trouble as a kid versus how well I can handle them as an adult who has a lot more experience with both gaming in general and also, like, the franchises in question. Where, like, in Sonic games, like, it was a struggle to get even this far in the game. And meanwhile, now I'm just Sonic'd out enough that I, like, can get through it just fine. Pretty comfortably. Another example that usually comes to mind with like that is, which is topical because I'm actually playing a ROM hack of Gold and Silver right now. In, like, Gold, Silver, Crystal, and I guess also Red and Blue, but you know, Red and Blue was, like, so early on that I barely have any memories of actually playing it. Whenever there's, like, a surfing route in those games, I feel like when I was a kid, they felt like they took eternity, and I went on, like, an actual, like, overseas adventure trying to get to the other side. And then I play it as an adult, and it turns out that it's, like, one screen with, like, a handful of tentacles, like... And I'm just like, oh. I kind of like that I had that experience as a kid, because it made it feel, like, a lot bigger than I guess it really was. That maybe I just got that lost. Or maybe I just, you know, was a kid and had no idea how to make anything resembling a proper Pokemon team, and the battles were actually a lot harder. I think there's something to say for that, though. that can apply to like just about any game. It's kind of cool that the less experienced version of a playthrough of a game like that can just totally be its own vibe. As a kid, the OG Sonic games were too fast for me to progress. Coming from games like Star Wars and bad PS2 movie games, I couldn't have that reaction time for these. Still suck as I'm an adult, but I do better. I think that's totally valid. I was talking about that a little bit earlier, actually, as far as like, as somebody who is way more seasoned in Sonic games now as an adult, being a franchise that I play a lot. Like, looking back on the contrast of like how much effort some of the stages took me as a kid, it makes it fun to look back on them. More like, it's more than just like replaying a game. It's like, wow, it's like a benchmark of where my brain was at when I was like, I don't know, 5 years old. But it's still such a strong core memory of playing the game that it's hard not to think about it. Yeah. I've talked about this stage before. Specifically in the context of like the music and the vibes just being like so perfect that like I feel like it hyped me up on the concept of like going in an airplane being like a really whimsical experience. And considering I've still never been in one, for all I know it might still be for me, but people don't exactly treat it like one, so I'm not entirely sure. Yeah, okay. This is where I was talking about earlier that has kind of a funny story to it. I first got to the stage and was like, wow, I really like this song. And listened, like, without having an OST that told me what song it actually was just kind of, like, I listened to it, like, non-stop for a little while. And, eventually, I found a YouTube video that was like, yeah, this... Oh, well, now it's not playing, but... yeah, this is a Michael Jackson song. And I was like, oh, holy shit. Like, I didn't know, like... One, I didn't know about the Michael Jackson Sega Genesis game. Two, I didn't know about his, like, connection to Sonic stuff at the time. Like, I think that was, like, how I found out more about that. This is a ROM hack, so that's obviously just, like, the song being, you know, plopped into the game from the Michael Jackson Genesis game. But I think it was mostly just a funny moment of just kind of, like... I don't know, pop culture at that time, like, pretty much told you that you were supposed to hate Michael Jackson. So I guess I did, and never considered that I might have liked his music. And then literally the first time I hear a Michael Jackson song, it's like one of his best songs, and I can't stop listening to it. And I just didn't realize it was a Michael Jackson song. I'm trying to think if there's like many particularly interesting childhood stories I have of this game. The only one that like really comes to mind is that going back, talking about how like the creator of this game has like a YouTube channel. They have one video that talks about the fact that this game has like a really funny failsafe to it, where I guess to get past like standards, you know, like for game releases back in the day, you needed to have as like few glitches when it came to like hard crashes as possible. So what they did was made it so whenever the game crashed, or whenever the game was supposed to have like a pretty normal crash, instead it would just go to the level select screen. Just so instead you're like, oh, how did I do that? Oh, sick, we're at the level select screen. I must have entered some kind of cheat. And I definitely did that when I was a kid, where I like bumped the console. And apparently that's enough to like set it off sometimes. And I remember trying to recreate it afterwards. I was like, all I did was bump the console and I got to the level 6 screen. How did I do that? And that was like the only way I saw the later stages as a kid. Seeing that video was just like, I don't know, closure, I guess. Because it did confuse me a lot at the time. And there is actually a level select sheet at the start menu, and it's totally possible that I could have like hit it by accident or something. But that wasn't it. It was actually way stupider.